It's been a long road leading up to Halo Reach. Bungie began work on Combat Evolved nearly 10 years ago, and since then the franchise has grown into one of the biggest in gaming history. Reach is the last Halo game being made by the developer, and while it certainly isn't perfect and may not appeal to everyone, they've definitely managed to take what they've learned over the past decade in order to make this a game to remember. Reach takes place before the rest of the series and is set on the colony known as Reach, which serves as the UNSC's main military hub. You play as Noble 6, who is part of a military squad known as Noble Team. The game opens as the team is sent in to investigate a damaged relay station and come upon the Covenant. The story picks up from there, and without going into too much detail, you make your way through several encounters with the Covenant forces in an attempt to stop the invasion. The story is pretty straightforward and definitely easier to understand than the second and third games. Seeing as you're not playing as Master Chief, Bungie had to step up the storytelling in order to keep it interesting, and along with some decent character development, they've done a pretty good job of it. The actual Halo story within the games themselves has never been all that amazing. Anyone who's read the books can't help but feel a bit shortchanged. But the story is definitely more fleshed out this time, and is more than just nonsensical plot elements like the past couple of games have been. But that's not to say that there isn't still room for improvement. The Halo games have always looked good, but never really managed to raise the bar as far as visuals go, and Reach is mostly the same story. It looks great compared to Halo 3, which had some pretty lackluster graphics. Everything is a lot cleaner and sharper, but overall it's mostly what you've come to expect. The thing that does manage to stand out is the level design, which is arguably the best in any Halo game. Technically speaking, they're a mixed bag. Some look great and feature amazing backdrops, and some look downright awful. Thankfully, some muddy textures don't ruin the levels themselves. It's the way they've managed to put everything together to make for realistic and dynamic environments that are all genuinely a ton of fun to run through that make this Halo game easily the most varied. Unlike the previous games, it consists of way more than just long corridors and the occasional grassy field. While some parts may look reminiscent of past games, within the context of Reach itself, everything looks fresh and is constantly changing. The visuals don't come without a few problems, however, as there is a decent amount of slowdown during battles, and some texture pop-in when entering new environments. It's noticeable, but thankfully doesn't hinder the game. Noble Team, along with the rest of the game's characters, are voiced pretty well. They really help with the character development, as well as moving the story along and keeping you engaged. The music in Halo hasn't really done much for me since the first game, as it's mostly just been different twists on the same thing. Reach is once again composed by Martin O'Donnell, but I was much more impressed this time around as some greater care with the soundtrack has obviously been taken. It's still not really my thing, but fans will appreciate it. As for the sound effects, been there, done that. They're not bad, just basic, and very little has changed in 10 years. The gameplay will also feel familiar to Halo fans, as it's mostly identical to all the rest. The combat is smooth and the shooting is responsive and precise, just like it's always been. It can't help but feel a bit dated at times though. Rather than introducing a barrage of changes, they stuck with what they had and refined it. There aren't many new gameplay mechanics, but there have been a lot of little tweaks made that does make everything feel a lot more fluid than before. That's not to say that they haven't done anything new, as some flight segments have been added where you finally get to pilot something other than a Banshee, and while they don't take up a substantial portion of the game, they're very fun and change up the pace a bit. They've also added special shields that can be changed out as you come upon them, and they come with special abilities such as being able to sprint, use different defensive shields, and even don a jetpack to boost yourself around. It's a lot of fun. For the majority of the game, you'll be doing what you've come to expect, blasting your way through every Covenant enemy in sight. You've got most of your familiar weapons from past games. A few have been added and a few have been taken away. The old ones aren't really missed and the new ones blend in nicely. The pacing in Reach is decent, although they still haven't really moved beyond one big battle after another, and you'll see continuous dropships bringing in more fodder. Sometimes things can play out a little too long, especially toward the end, but it moves along nicely enough to where you'll never truly get tired of taking out enemies until the game is over. The thing that really keeps this game exciting, as I said before, is the level design. It truly can't be praised enough, and I'm completely confident in saying that without the diverse levels as they are, this would basically just be a refined Halo 3. And yes, that is still an insult. As it is, I haven't had this much fun since the first game, and it's really a great thing that they've decided to pay as much care to the campaign as they did before. The difficulty of the campaign mode has been bumped up a few notches. I played through it on normal difficulty and actually got hung up on a few areas that I was having trouble getting through. That's never really happened with Halo. The thing about the battles is that the enemy numbers are much greater, and they're a lot more aggressive than they've been in the past. Their aim has improved, they're given more powerful weapons, and they're harder to take down, and you will be dying quite often due to some well-placed grenades or explosive shots. While the AI has been made more aggressive on the offensive front, they still tend to have some problems with defense. It mostly consists of them just running back and forth and not much else. Sometimes they'll even just stand there and let you pick them off. Despite these little complaints, Halo Reach has the best campaign mode since Combat Evolved, and while the battles could still use some variety, the levels make this one far more memorable than before. Now on to the heart of the game for most people, which is the online multiplayer mode. I'll start this off with a completely honest statement. I do not like Halo's Online. I don't dislike it because it's bad, but because it's not my style. I like realism, strategy, and more in-depth gameplay that consists of a lot more than just frantic run-and-gun combat. Still, the numbers don't lie, and while I'm not alone in this, I'm clearly in the minority. Halo has really managed to hook casual gamers who aren't as concerned with things like that. So, for the sake of this review, I'll be objective. The multiplayer mode is about as feature-rich as they come, with every mode that you can think of, including those that you can create yourself. It's simple and easy to get into. You enter matchmaking like you always have and go at it. Everyone from Halo vets to those who have never played a shooter before can hop on and get into the action, so it's no surprise that so many non-gamers have taken a liking to it. The combat is just as smooth as in the campaign, and aside from the occasional disconnect or lag spike, it's a solid and well thought out system. Some character customization has also been added that allows you to spend points in order to make all kinds of cosmetic changes to your character, that's also reflected in the single player and all other modes. The map selection is the only thing that's lacking. There are only 13 maps, and some of them are reimaginings from past games. It's cool to see some old favorites, but a greater number of new maps would have been a good idea. If you've been into the online mode since Halo 2, you're really in for a great time with this one, as it's just as good as before, but a bunch of additions change it up nicely. If you're over it like me, well, there's always the campaign again. Halo Reach is a pretty short experience, clocking in at just under 7 hours, but you'll more than likely play through this one several times. Going through it with a friend via co-op is also still a blast. The online is hit or miss, although admittedly most should love it, and for those people there's more than enough here to keep you hooked for months. A few things also make a return, such as Firefight from ODST, as well as the Forge, which allows you to customize maps, and has been much improved. The only thing I'd like to see now is the ability to play these custom maps and custom game modes through matchmaking. You can also still play back online matches and pull screenshots and video clips to share with friends. Still a really awesome system that needs to be added to more online games. Overall, the star of the show for me was the campaign, and while that alone isn't enough to warrant a purchase, if you own a 360, this is one that you definitely can't miss. Bungie is going out strong with Reach, and if Master Chief weren't busy getting the hell out of there, he'd be proud.